Broadcasting from the Cass Corridor in Detroit, this is The Metro, a slice of news, culture, and conversation. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. Today on the program, food is so much more than nourishment.
It's a teacher and a connector. It slows down the pace of life and helps us savor moments that might otherwise pass us by.
On this Fat Tuesday, we'll talk to local chefs expanding our palates with the food traditions they've imported from across the world.
Plus, we'll flip through the pages of a historic cookbook. It's the oldest known cookbook by a Black woman, and a new edition is out now.
But first, in the years following World War II, Detroit had a thriving transit system that served nearly 2 million people. The Department of Street Railways was the predecessor to DDOT. It operated hundreds of buses and over 900 streetcars on 20 streetcar routes. That included a streetcar on Michigan Avenue. The streetcar tracks across the city have since been paved over, but a new campaign urges the question: what would it look like to revive that streetcar route on Michigan Avenue and beyond? And what would a truly integrated transit system in Metro Detroit look like? One that's affordable and accessible.
The Metro Detroit chapter of the Detroit Socialists of America has been thinking about these questions for years, Robin, and now it's launching a campaign to move the needle on transit in Detroit. It wants to help shape a new Wayne County 2026 transit ballot initiative. That initiative is still in development, but Metro Detroit's Democratic Socialists appear to have a bigger vision for that initiative. Here to tell us more is DSA's Melina Herrera. Melina, welcome to the Metro.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So Melina, first things first.
Where do we want to get started?
Yeah, no worries at all. Thank you for joining us on the Metro. Want to say first, why is developing transit in Metro Detroit a priority for the local Democratic Socialists of America?
Yeah, so first thing we wanted to put out there is that our campaign launch is this Friday, 5 p.m. at Motor City Wine, which is on Michigan Ave, 1949 Michigan Ave. So that's first thing first. And so to your question, as socialists, we believe that things should be owned by the public. The working class should be essentially running things, which is not what's happening now. And we see transit as it's already a public good, and it definitely needs improvement, especially in Detroit. And so we are hoping to make it better for working class Detroiters.
Yeah, so the campaign, Melina, that you're launching is called Bring Back the Tracks, and it's a nod to Detroit's historic streetcar system, specifically the route on Michigan Avenue, which you all will be there. Could you paint a picture of what transit in Detroit used to look like during its heyday? What did those streetcars look like?
Oh, my goodness. Yes. So the history of Detroit transit really deserves its own show because it's rich. Some facts that we've come across as we've done research for this campaign is, 1922, so a little over 100 years ago, Detroit actually had the largest municipal system of street rail in the whole country.
I'm going to stop you right there, Melina. I'm going to stop you right there just for 1 second. So at that moment in 1922, the city of Detroit had the largest streetcar transportation in the country?
In the whole country, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
So imagine every street, really quick, we could go into the spoke system of Detroit. So all these big streets, they are laid out in spokes, kind of like a bicycle wheel, right? And so all those streets had streetcars on it. So yes, we're talking about Michigan Ave, we're talking about Woodward, we're talking about Gratiot, Jefferson. Everything had streetcars on it. In 1923, over 350 million rides were recorded on the streetcar system. And it even went into some of our suburbs. So it went to Grosse Pointe, went to Royal Oak, all the way to Wyandotte. So it was a very expensive system. And so we're seeing this as a return to a Detroit that was accessible for more people. Bringing in workers. Detroit at its peak was over 2 million people. And so we want to see that. We want to see that come back to where we are bringing people back into Detroit. We're making it easier for people to go to work. People right now, people are, missing out on employment opportunities because they don't have a car. Detroit, despite being the mortar city, we have about a third of Detroiters do not have reliable access to a vehicle right now. And people are missing out on those opportunities. Missing school. We have children who are missing school or late to school. We have people who are missing out on enjoying our city because they can't get out of their neighborhoods. And then going back to that history of those streetcars, interesting thing to me is that into the 1950s, these streetcars were operating all over Detroit, and they were dismantled in the 50s. Hundreds of the streetcars were sent to Mexico City, and they continued to operate in Mexico City for another 30 years into the 80s. So we could have had that. There's not really any reason for Detroit to have had those streetcars taken away.
Yeah, and I'm thinking just about the preservation of history. Do we know if those streetcars still exist anywhere right now?
As far as we could tell, there's one that exists in a sort of exhibit in San Francisco, but no, the Mexico City replaced all of them by the late 80s.
Wow. And it seems like the city of Detroit does still have a few left. So transit in Detroit has long been plagued with major issues, such as a lack of funding and a lack of political will from lawmakers. What are the biggest obstacles to making this kind of plan a reality that we're talking about, expanding streetcars and public transit in the city of Detroit?
Yeah, the biggest obstacle is that we have had a city council that doesn't really advocate for our people. We keep giving tax breaks to our city's billionaires, like the Illiches and Dan Gilbert. And we think that we, as the Democratic Socialists of America, believe that instead of giving tax breaks to billionaires, we should be reinvesting in our city. To actually benefit everybody in Detroit, not just people who are, in downtown and in the so-called district.
And Melina, Dan Gilbert has come out in favor of more public transit. Do you think that's enough?
We could definitely do more. As we've been talking about this campaign, the thing that keeps coming up is the Q line, right? So the Q line right now is really our only example in Detroit of a streetcar, but we're seeing it as an example of what is possible. And, Dan Gilbert could have afforded to make the Q line go all the way up to 8 Mile. It didn't have to stop right there in New Center. It could have kept on going, and it would have benefited way more people. But even then, the Q line does actually have a pretty big ridership. It's not 350 million rides yet, but a couple years ago, it did break 1 million rides in a year, and it is being used by Detroiters. 50% of people who ride the Q line are Detroit residents. They're folks who work in the city, and it's a lot of Black and brown folks, and so we're actually seeing that as what's possible. So. We are hoping that there is some of that investment from those folks who have been getting those tax breaks.
You're listening to The Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. We're discussing what an integrated transit system in Metro Detroit could look like. Our guest is Melina Herrera with Metro Detroit's Democratic Socialists of America. It's launching a new transit campaign this week. Melina, this transit campaign has been years in the making. So it has me wondering, has Metro Detroit DSA spoken with residents about what exactly they want and need from transit in Detroit?
Yes. So this campaign was born from, years of work. A few years ago, we ran a campaign in Oakland County. We were knocking doors, asking folks to vote for more funding for SMART, which is the more regional transit system. And we ended up getting about 67% of the vote there. And, you know, I knock on people's doors, and people do want to be able to get out of their cars and have other ways of getting around the city. And then this campaign in particular was brought up in the chapter by people who work and live in Corktown. So the kind of originator of the campaign is somebody who works at a bar on Michigan Avenue. One of the residents of Corktown, who has been a leader in the campaign, lives right off of Michigan and Trumbull. So you know, this is definitely coming from like the streets of Corktown, from Michigan Ave.
I see. And yeah, to stay on Michigan Ave and more broadly in Wayne County, I wonder if we can talk about the proposed 2026 Wayne County millage. Currently, 17 communities don't pay into the SMART system. So someone living in Canton Township or Livonia who doesn't own a car has no way of getting to Detroit because no bus travels through either community. So how would this millage broadly change that? And we will remind listeners again that that's a goal of this campaign, is for DSA to have a big seat at the table with the millage and to help shape it. Is that right?
Yes, and it's not just DSA, it's not just the Democratic Socialists of America. We are part of a coalition of about 30 orgs who want to influence that ballot initiative. So it's a pretty big movement, really, to make that happen. And us as DSA, we are all about hitting the ground. We will be at people's doors asking you all to vote in 2026, because we know that when we go out and we, one, remind people that an election day is coming up, and two, make that ask, people do come out to the ballot box. And like we saw in Oakland County a few years ago, you know, that was 67% is no small number for that transit millage. So we anticipate that with enough organizing, you know, we got about a little over a year here, with enough organizing, we will get those votes.
But what exactly? I mean, the plan is still in a developing phase right now. What all does the plan say so far?
For which part of the plan for
the initiative, the Wayne County, the 2026 initiative that you and other organizations hope to shape?
So right now we are asking more funding. I mean, the most basic part of it.
And that is more funding to expand the initiative, to expand it so it's not, I mean, my understanding right now is that it's focused on expanding bus service, but you and other organizations want to see a more integrative transit system. Yes.
That is exactly it. So Right now, I mean, if we want to focus back in Detroit right now, DDOT, the Detroit Department of Transportation, is facing a bus driver shortage. So we talk about buses that are always running late. If they show up at all, there's been times buses do not show up for people. And that's because of the bus driver shortage. So one of the things that we advocate for is to get bus drivers more higher wages, because right now they are severely underpaid. And so folks don't want those jobs. So if we were to invest more into our transportation fund, we would be able to pay bus drivers more, and then therefore we would have more buses and better service.
Melina, before we let you go, I'm wondering what has this political moment meant meant for DSA with President Trump in the White House and his massive reshaping of the federal government and a lot of the work that the president and others are doing to dismantle DEI efforts. I mean, that's just naming only just a few things happening right now. What are some of the issues that you all are organizing around in addition to transportation?
Yeah, so we are a national org. We have well over 70,000 members nationally. We have over 200 elected officials nationally, including our own Rashida Tlaib is a member. And it's very much beyond transit. We see this campaign as we need to organize locally. So we have hundreds of local chapters all over the country. And so this is part of our local focus where we want to improve our localities because we're kind of feeling a bit abandoned from, by the federal government. We have a fascist president whose billionaire boss is dismantling our federal government. So we are hoping that by organizing locally, we'll be able to at least help our cities. Now, on the national level, we are doing a lot. We're very focused on protecting our trans comrades. We have a trans rights and bodily autonomy working group that is trying very hard to make sure people are informed about what's going on, make sure we've been working on some fundraising to help people, with name changes, doing a lot of that kind of work. We are very focused on protecting abortion as part of that bodily autonomy. We have a robust immigrant rights group where we are making sure people know their rights when and if ICE comes to their door. We do immigrant protection. So we're doing a lot
of things.
Because we do.
Melina, I'm sure that you could go on with that list, but we are out of time. So I want to thank you for joining us on the Metro. Melina Herrera is with Metro Detroit's Democratic Socialists of America. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us, and come out on Friday, Motor City Wine.
The Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. Coming up, a former White House economic advisor explains what tariffs are and how they will impact us. We'll be right back here on the Metro. Stay right there.